Hey everybody, this is the painting we're going to do today. It is a little succulent plant in a pot, and I had a lot of fun mixing these greens and blues and creating some shadows and highlights. It got quite thick, but it was a really fun little piece. So you can paint on canvas or whatever you have at home, canvas board, paper that's meant for painting. It's all good. So let's get started. If you haven't already seen my video on how to set up your palette, you'll want to check that out. I have a lot of colors on here that I don't normally use. They're just kind of from another painting I've been working on, but yeah, watch that video and it'll clarify everything here. I use a small selection of brushes. Again, use what you have handy. They're relatively small to medium-sized brushes. And I like to have some paper towel. And I'm using water-soluble oils. So I just use a glass jar with some water in it to clean my brushes. Okay, so we're going to start with the underpainting. And for that, I also have this handy-dandy palette knife, which I use for mixing colors. You can use a brush, so you don't have to have this, but it's just a handy tool. So for my underpainting, I'm going to take raw sienna, and I'm going to mix up a good amount because I know I'm going to do a couple of these back to back, but at home, you could probably use half of that. So raw sienna and then cadmium red. I use less red. It's mostly raw sienna with a little bit of red mixed into it. Give that a mix. And again, you can use any color you like for your underpainting. This is just what I've grown to love. But, you know, some people you could use just raw sienna straight. You can use a green color. You know, you can go with the predominant color that's in your painting. It's totally a personal choice. Okay, I've got that color. I'm just going to leave it in the middle because I know I'll be adding some water to that. So I'm going to take my biggest brush, whatever the largest brush you have is, and I'm just going to dip it in water. Just dunk the brush in some water and then into my paint. And you do have to be a little careful about thinning these water mixable oils, but at the early stages it's perfectly fine. They will break down the paints if you thin them too much, and it does dull the colors a little bit, but this is just my underpainting, so I'm not worried. And now we just cover the whole canvas. Not worrying about brush strokes or anything right now. I don't touch the sides because I like to finish that off at the end. If you're somebody who likes to wrap your painting around the sides, you might want to paint this on the sides, but I prefer to just paint a solid color on the sides when I'm done. Also, some people might want to use acrylic for this stage. If you're the type of person that wants to go straight into it, so for instance, this will have to sit, my underpaintings have to sit for a day or two to set and dry a little bit before I go into the color stage. So if you want to continue it on, I would suggest using acrylic paint for this step. And then it'll dry within minutes and you'll be able to carry on with the oils in one session. This is just kind of the method that I've always used, and it just requires a little bit of pre-planning. You know, so I usually start a few underpaintings in a day because they're the quickest part, and then, like I said, let them dry for a day or two and then go into the color. Okay, I also just love this color that I achieved here, and I don't know if I could do that with regular acrylics. Probably find something similar, but again, it's all personal preference. Okay, so that's my underpainting in. I'm just going to clean my brush, and that's just in water, pouncing it down so that most of the color gets out of there. You can follow along with regular oil paints as well. So you would just use solvent instead of water when you're cleaning. You can also use solvent to thin or linseed oil to thin. So when I'm dipping my brush in the water to thin it out, you might want to use linseed oil if you're using regular oil paints. You'll notice I also have gloves on. That's just something I've kind of become used to. It's probably a little overkill because I've learned that my water mixable oils are not as bad as I had thought, because a lot of them are hues, not natural pigments. But that's a whole nother video on itself. So your choice if you want to wear gloves or not. Okay, so next step is I like to use purple for the sketch. But if you don't have purple, you can just mix your dark red with your blue. Okay? And again, I dip my brush in water at this early stage, just because it helps the paint flow a little bit better. Okay, let's see. So today we're going to be doing a little succulent plant. It's kind of a close-up shot, and so what I like to do when I'm sketching, sometimes I grid things, but for small pieces I don't usually worry about it. I'll provide a sketch for you as well, but what I like to do is kind of rough in the overall shape of it, just with a few dots, and then it kind of allows me to go in with some lines, looser lines there. Okay, now he's got some really nice petals, and they sort of start, I'll just mark the center of it, and then the pot itself, it's kind of a downward shot here, so the pot just kind of tapers off here. Here we go. Okay, now for the petals, again, I try not to get too fussy with details and just do overall shapes. But with this one, it is a pretty close-up shot, so we will be seeing a lot of that detail. I like to paint it in. Some people draw and then paint, but I find it's a lot looser if I paint in. Also, when you draw, you get a little bit more detailed than you can with a brush, so it's a little bit, doesn't translate, you know, from pencil to brush so well. I'll take a snapshot of this sketch that I'm doing so that you can use it as a reference drawing. But feel free to just freehand it along with me here. And they sort of go over the edge of this guy, so you really can't see this top ridge here, so I'll make sure that they all go over that. And there we go. You can sort of see the soil. Also, I darken any spots at this point, so any shadows I fill in here. There's a few more over here. And my pot is light white and my countertop is light too, so I'll keep those all pretty light. Just gonna darken a little bit here. The petals are kind of a mid-tone, so I'll just probably leave that with my orange. This underpainting process is really nice because it just simplifies everything. By creating a mid-tone, all you have to do is do your darks and lights. So it takes a lot of that work out of there for you. I think that's pretty good. So I'm just gonna clean my brush out. My next step is to do my highlights, and I usually like to use paper towel and a brush for that. So I'm just gonna steal some paper towel here. Okay, so I just have a little sheet of paper towel. I fold it up and I dip it in my water. It's okay if the water's a little colored, not a huge deal. And again, if you're using regular oils, just use either solvent to do this stage or linseed oil. You might want to use a brush, but okay, so then I just take my paper towel and simply dab it and wipe off the excess paint where I want it to be light. Now there's a small little ridge, so for the small details I'll use my brush with water. Okay, there's a small light detail on the top of the pot there, and I just rub off any excess paint on my paper towel, dip it in some more water, and it kind of goes all the way up here. And I might just throw it over here as well. There's a little highlight on that side there. Okay, there's some shiny spots too. It does get a little darker on this side, so I'll leave that. But it gets brighter back here, and overall it's pretty light in the background, so I think I'll just lighten up most of the background. I'll fade it out here, and I'm just kind of doing like a cross hatch, but it doesn't really matter. It's just whatever you want to do at this stage. I want to make it pop around the edge of this, so I think I'll just go all the way around the succulent here. Paper towel can be a really good medium to paint with, because at the beginning you feel like you don't have a lot of control, but then once you get more comfortable doing it, it actually gives you a lot of really neat effects. So you can take large sections away. You can also change the pressure that you use, and just gives you a neat look. When we use brushes all the time, it can be, we can control it a lot, and sometimes that's not a good thing. So having a little less control sometimes is nice. Creates these neat little brushstroke kind of effects here. I might do a little bit with my brush in the actual plant here, just to highlight some of these lighter spots. The edges have a little bit of a highlight. I don't go too crazy at this stage because it's just a guideline, really. I don't use my underpainting, as I guess the word would be diligently, as some artists do. It's not my, final stage, like as in sometimes I don't put every single tone, detail, whatever into this part. It's really just a fun, loose part of the painting process to get me going. I don't labor over it, let's put it that way. Yeah. So I'm just pulling out a few highlights every once in a while. Okay, and you can go back in and darken things too, like if you feel like you need more detail than that. I can go back in here with my dark purple and just bring things out if they've lost, their edge or whatever it is. But again, I like to keep it fairly loose, so I'm not really worried about this stuff. Sometimes it helps to darken the dark spots too here. Okay, I think that's pretty good for now. There's a little darkness in the petal there, but yeah, that's good. Okay, so now I rinse out my brush, and at this stage, I'm done, and I would let it sit and dry, like I said, for a day or two, and then carry on with color. But again, yeah, if you want to do it straight one session, you could go into this. It's just going to be a little wet and it mixes with the colors a bit. So I'd suggest using acrylics if you do want to do it one session. So that's stage one. Okay. Hello and welcome to part 2 of this painting demo. So my canvas has dried, my paints have dried for a couple days now, and it's good to go. So I'm going to start the color. So I would recommend watching my video on how to lay out and set up your palette. But basically I've got the 3 primary colors here. If you don't have the exact same colors, not to worry, we're just trying to keep it simple. So if you can get close to it, that's great. And yeah, don't worry about exact colors. I've got cadmium yellow pale hue, permanent alizarin crimson, and French ultramarine, and some titanium white. That's a good starter palette. If you're just beginning and you want to keep it really simple, I've got some water in a jar, and I'm using water mixable oils, so that's why I can thin with water. If you're using regular oils, you'll just want to use your preferred solvent, so you can use linseed oil to thin. You can also just use a mineral spirit, an oil, odorless mineral spirit to thin. And then I've got a selection of brushes. I tend to just use some small, I've got a flat angled, flat, and a filbert. Again, just personal preference. So try it out, see what you like. And some paper towel to pat down my brushes, and then a palette knife for mixing. Okay, so I am going to start with the background and then work forward. There's a few different methods, and nothing's right or wrong. It's just the way I've always done it. I will do some other demos showing other ways because I've been learning some different ways, but for this one I want to keep it real simple, and we'll just start with our background. So this guy is a little green succulent plant, and he's got a white pot, and the background is mostly white as well. So I want to mix up a white, but I don't want it to be pure white. I want some colors in it. So I'm just going to take some of my white here, and I will try to mix it down here. I try to keep the middle space as free as possible, so I'll try to work, you know, on the edges at first until it gets all filled up at the end. I also lay my palette out the same way every time because that's really helpful for memory, muscle memory. So I'm just going to take like a tiny little bit of some other colors here to make this not white. Basically, I want it to be a little bit more interesting than that. So let's start with maybe just yellow and see how that goes. I also have a lot of paint here. You probably don't need to squeeze out this much. I'm just used to working really large, and sometimes I work with multiple little pieces at a time. Okay, that's a nice color. I think I'll need more of it, but perhaps what I'll do is I'll take this and just move it off to the side here, and then make another one, which is just a bit lighter. So all I do is steal a bit of that guy, mix it into the white. So it's just a little bit off from my titanium white there. And at any point, if you want to change the colors of what we're doing, feel free. If you're more vibrant and you like, you know, something funkier, do a red background or whatever it may be. Okay, so I've got 2 shades of off-white here. And I think I'll start with my darker color and my small brush here. I wear gloves just out of habit and safety, obviously. So these paints are pretty non-toxic, but I just have gotten used to it and kind of like it this way. So gloves are optional, but don't lick your brushes. That's all I can say. Okay, so let's get... I'll just work on the background for now. So I'm just going to go close to the edge here. With the darker of the two. And then I'll bring in the light one afterwards. Another reason I like the underpainting is because occasionally you get spots showing through, and I actually like that. So I don't worry too much about filling in every single spot. It's going to get a little darker down here, but let me just fill this in for now. Okay, now I'm always a fan of use the biggest brush possible. So like for this background, you could jump to a bigger brush, but I also don't really want to muddy up a brush just for the sake of muddying up a brush. So I'll just stick with this guy for now. Go into the lighter color, and I'm just gonna do some thicker brush strokes here. Now these are very similar in color, so you may not be able to even see a difference really on camera. That's okay. I try to go around the edges too, because there's like a little bit of a bend on the edge, so I just don't want any orange on that part. And I'm just going to go all the way around here. This will probably be, we'll probably do another coat on this background, but if not, you just kind of want to make sure you're happy with the brush strokes. So you can kind of see a halo there, so I'm just going to go over it with my dark color afterwards. Okay, so like I said, it's got some shadow down here, a little bit, and a little bit of highlight over here. So I think I'll throw in some of that. So let me just set this aside. So let's make a shadow color. So shadows tend to be blue and purple in color. So what I can do is just take some of this, because I got a lot of this, and then we'll just take like a smidge of red and a little bit of blue. Blue's very strong, so just be careful. I might balance that out a little bit more there. Okay, and I'm just going to mix that into the white and see what I get. That's a nice color. Okay, so I think I'll go with that, and I might want another little darker. So let's take a little bit of that with a little bit more blue here. Just a little bit more. I'm so used to using the other blue. The phthalo blue is a lot darker. So I have to be more careful with it. That's nice. Okay. So I got a nice little purple shade there. Now I think I'll switch to a medium-sized brush, a little bit bigger than my other one. I'll go in with the dark stuff first, and this is going to be on this side here. Little shadow there. Okay. And there's some interesting things happening on the pot itself. So there's kind of a darker spot down here. And here. Now I might even darken this a little bit. Now I'm just going to take my brush and mix a little here, just to get a bit of a darker shade for this side here. I like to leave some of the dark underpainting showing because it works really well to create some nice lines. There. I might use this one over here too. Okay, that's pretty good. Now, I think I'll go back to, I will use this light purple here. So let me just clean my brush out. I just do like a little squiggle down at the bottom of the jar, kind of a pounce, get the water out and paint out. Okay, we'll jump to this guy here and throw that in here. And a little bit over here. I like to paint with the shape of what I'm doing. So the overall shape of this pot is up and down, so vertical. So I want to keep it kind of vertical. You know, you can do this way for the ring on the top, but it just kind of helps to create that illusion that, you know, this is an item that's standing up this way. Make us believe in the shape a little bit more. Okay, that's kind of funky. Now there's a little highlight speck on there, so let's throw that down. I'll use my white brush. Sometimes I like to keep certain brushes for light colors and certain for dark, but it's different every time I do it. So there's a little highlight there and a little bit in the top here. Maybe some over on that side. And then I also have some on the background there as well as a little bit of a highlight. So maybe I'll just take pure white for that because can't really see that, but that's okay. I'll just do a little bit more white over here because there's a bit of a highlight over here too. Okay, I like the way that's looking. Might just throw a little bit more of that in and around here because I like the way it's doing its thing there. Let's see. There's so much improvisation going on with painting. So you gotta just feel it out and see what works for you. Okay, I like the texture of that, what's happening in the background. So I think I'll just leave it for now. And we'll get into our plant. So I'll clean my brush out. And we'll get to these green colors here. They're the exciting part. Also, what you can do is if you find your palette's a bit too messy, you can take some paper towel and wet it and just wipe off the paint, and that'll clear off most of the paint there. But I'm just going to work with it here. So I want to create a few different types of green for my succulent here. So I'm going to take some yellow and some blue. I'll start with a good amount and then maybe lighten it from there. So got yellow. Now just be careful with blue because it's a strong color and all the brands are different. So I tend to go in gently with my blue. You can always add more. You can't take it away. Also, a nice trick or tip for making green is to add a little bit of red. just helps the colors look a little bit more natural. But our French ultramarine does have a lot of red in it, so I don't mind this color so much. And the colors that I want to paint are a little bit more on the teal side, so I might favor more of a blue-green shade this time around. Okay, so that's nice for like our mid-tone. I'm gonna just scrape that off. Set it aside. Okay, now I want to get this teal color. So what I like to do is start with blue for that. Maybe a little less. Okay, start with blue, and then I want to go in with some white. Now I can use what I have over here because I'm not really using it for anything. I might use it for highlights, but basically just to try to save paint along the way. If you know you're not going to use it, go for it. So a little bit of white. This is the way I like to make my teals, my blue greens. I start with the blues and the whites, and then I go in with the yellow because it doesn't take much yellow to turn it teal. So I try to start with the largest amount possible. Like if it's a strong blue color, I'll start with the blue and then the white. Okay, so I just take a little bit of yellow here. And I'll just keep mixing it in until it starts to show. And be careful because there can be lots of unmixed paint, so sometimes you just want to scrape it all up and turn it over kind of like that. So just keep going here until I see the shade that I'm looking for. Just give your knife a good wipe there. See, there's a lot of yellow still in there. That's looking nice. I like that shade. Okay, that's pretty good. Now, I've got 2 shades of green, which is good. What I can do is lighten those and darken them. And there's also a little bit of a red color, which is very close to this permanent alizarin crimson that goes around the outside edges of these guys. So let's just make some of that up while we are on a bit of a mixing roll. And sometimes I like to use that existing paint on the palette to marry colors together. So it's actually a benefit when there's a little bit of paint left over. Even some of the white can come into that, and that's the magic of mixing. It's very like a one-off, you know, because you're kind of dealing with things that are mixed in here. So, but once you get to use it like that, you'll enjoy it. It's nice. Okay, that's a pretty close color, so I might just leave it at that. Maybe a touch of yellow just to warm it up a bit. That's nice. Okay, I think we'll be good with that. Now, I should mix some light colors in here too. So let's just wipe this off. Now you'll be able to see what I mean here. So I'm going to take, now if you want to, you can clean this off. I think I might enjoy what's going to happen here. So I'm just going to mix some white. I'll take some of this, but pure white's fine too. I just want to lighten this green up a little bit here. So I'm going to pull some red into it, just the way it works. And I don't mind that. That works kind of nicely to add a little bit of that red, like I was saying, to the green. So not a big deal there. Okay, and then I'll just squish that over there. So I've got a light of that. Maybe we'll do a light of this one. Take some more of this stuff here. maybe a little bit more white. Okay, so we got a light version of that now, and let's stick with that. I try to mix most of my colors at the beginning, but depends on the painting and how big it is and how much things change through the process. So don't worry if you don't get it right the first time. Okay, so let's see, what brush do I want to use? I think I'll go with the big one here, this angled one, but your preference. If you feel more comfortable smaller, do that. So first step is, let's see, this red is kind of the outline here. So I'm just gonna, what I like about the angled ones is you can actually get a fine line with them. Even though they're big, they have a nice point to them. They keep their shape well. So there's this red color on the outside, and it's hard to see because it's on top of my purple here, but I'm just going to throw that in to most of these edges here. Now, don't worry about the edges blending because you can fix that later or just leave it. It's kind of nice sometimes when they blend a little bit. Okay, I think I'll leave that for now. Let's see, the predominant color I want to use is kind of in between these guys, so I think I'll start with the darker one here. I like to start dark and work light typically, but all rules are kind of meant to be broken. So yeah, don't get too hung up on them because they can really restrict you. I'm just looking for dark spots here. So I won't do everything. I won't paint it solid, but because I do want to maintain these separate petals here. The other nice thing with the angled brush is you can get into some neat spots just by the way you press the brush down. Can give you some good pointy lines. They tend to get a little lighter on the inside here, so just a little bit there. Got a renegade hair here that wants to... Sometimes I cut the little ones that are sticking out if it's bothering your painting process. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Now I might switch to the smaller brush because I just want to get into those little spots there. So take this guy and I'll use the other green, the dark version of that, and just kind of fill in the rest of these spots in here. I'm gonna want to leave a good amount of the purple showing because that's kind of how I differentiate the different petals here, if you want to call them petals. You can start to blend the colors too. I'm a big fan of not blending too much. I like the impressionistic style where it's sort of almost pointillism. So I find when I blend too much, everything gets muddy. So I try to just do as few brush strokes as possible. Okay. See what's happening here. I gotta put another one in here. All right, now we can start to lighten it up. So let's do the light version of the teal color. Some people don't like to rinse their brush in between. You just have to make sure that there's not any water left in it, so it's not going to break down your paint. Okay, so I want to lighten basically the outside edges here, and this is where the magic of like 1 or 2 brush strokes comes in. So I tend not to want to overwork this at all. And I'll just put a few quick brush strokes in each petal here. And again, kind of working with the shape of it, so whichever direction it's going, I paint that way. And then I'll go in with the other light green as well. There's a bit of this light color in here. Okay, so now I'll go into the other light green. Here. You may find you want a smaller brush than this. I find when I get too small a brush, I get too worried about details. So I try to use a bigger brush wherever I can. And there's sort of techniques you can use, like loading the brush is really key. So make sure if you want to just kind of clean it off with the paper towel, and then just take a nice scoop so it's clean. And that's kind of where issues come in with, if your brush has got too much paint on it, it just explodes everywhere. So loading your brush is pretty important step. And then kind of angle the brush too. So instead of going really heavy-handed, just kind of angle it the way the paint is on there. So it's all a lot of feel, and it's a lot of practice. It's not a gift that comes naturally to people. I don't believe that. I believe you know, some people are more visual than others, but I believe it's all practice. It's like what makes an athlete good. Practice. Practice makes perfect. Or, you know, close. Better. Practice makes better. That's probably a good way to say it. So I'm just kind of looking at where the highlights are, and they're kind of around the outside edges of the petals. I think I'll have to go in with some lighter colors here too, because it does feel a little dark. So all right, coming along. Throw some down here. Right, now I want to get a lighter bit of color. So I'm just going to take my brush, mix some white right into this light green here, and start to pull it forward a little bit more. Okay, so it starts in the center here. I'm going to need more paint there, so I'll just mix a little bit more. Also, a good trick I like to do is take your palette knife and just scoop up the paint so you get a nice roll on the palette knife, and then you can lay it down. But instead of it being all flat and mixed up on your palette, you got a nice little section of paint to pull off there. So that's kind of handy. So now I'm just going to look for edges to highlight and light spots. Okay, I might go in with my other teal and do the same thing. So I'll just mix some white into this light shade and get some more highlights that way. Kind of twist the brush a little bit and then pull some paint on here. That's nice. Now when it's really thick like this, it can be hard to not have it go muddy, so that's why I try to use as few brush strokes as possible. Also, get a good amount of paint on your brush, and instead of dragging it perpendicular, try holding your brush like you're just picking it up off the table and be more parallel to the surface. That will help the paint stay better instead of being scraped off. Okay, now I'm just going to look for spots that need a little bit more work here. So I see some dark spots I might want to go back to. So I just got my dark teal here, and I might throw a little bit more in the center. And I never really addressed the soil there, so we can create a dark color for that. So I'll clean my brush out here. Now we don't have black, but we can make a color very similar to black just by using a combination of our colors. So a little bit of our blue, basically a little bit of everything. Blue and red will be the predominant color. You could just use that, but it's very purple, so I like to add a little bit of yellow. Oops, just maybe, yeah, that should be fine. Okay, so the more yellow you add, the more brown it will be. So it's a little brown. It's okay. You want to darken it, just add some more blue and red. It's a pretty nice brown, black brown. That can go in there for the little bit of dirt that's in there. Okay, I think that's all that dirt needs. Now I see one more color. I sort of look at the whole thing and see what does it need. I want to add a little bit of a more yellow green here. So let me just move this stuff off to the side. And I'll just take some of my yellow. And I'll take a smidge of this lighter sort of mid-tone green that we have here. And then I'll probably want some white too. There we go. Okay. And it's a little bit on the yellow side, so maybe a smidge more of this green. And some more white. It's kind of neat. Okay, so I'm going to throw some of that in here. Mostly around the center, it's got sort of this lighter color. And I don't want to get too worried about like every single petal, so I'm sort of losing the details of them, but that's okay. I just want to get the overall color and shape here. maybe throw a couple in just at the outside edges there so it sort of harmonizes. Okay, and now I want to do one more thing. I want to lighten this. So I'll just take some white and this will be my highlight here. Now I need a little bit thicker, so I just need to, I think, do this here because it's getting thick. There we go. Popping out some of these edges now. And you can take this stage as far as you like. I will just do a few edges here, but you know, if you want to do all of them, you can. Just be careful. So easy to overdo it. Take a little bit of this. So our goal as painters is usually to simplify things for the viewer. So that's why I try not to go into every single, like if I'm painting a tree, I don't do every leaf. That's just crazy. I mean, hey, if you want to, that's cool. But, and that is a style some people do, but it would cause me a lot of stress and it should be an enjoyable experience. So you just kind of have to find what makes it enjoyable for you and go with that. Okay, I like the balance of all these colors in here. I feel like I need to reflect some of that in the pot. So I'm going to throw a little bit of this color down here into my pot and maybe some of this funky color here as well. Just felt a little like disjointed there, and maybe I'll throw some into my shadow, or maybe some of this teal color here. That'd work pretty nice. Okay, and I'll throw a little bit of white in there. Just smooth that out there. Okie dokie, I think I'm pretty good here. Let's see. Not sure if I liked that. Okay. I'll just put a little bit of highlight on the top here. And a little bit of white. Okay, I think we're pretty good. It's good to stand back and look at your painting from across the room. Take a photo of it, turn it upside down, just see it with fresh eyes, maybe even just walk out of the room for 5 minutes and come back. See if you like it. If there's things will jut out when you see it with fresh eyes again. I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out. Nice little succulent plant. And I did leave some of the underpainting there. I like that. So I hope you enjoyed that. All right. Don't forget to clean your brushes. Super important part of the job. Thanks for joining me, guys. Take care.